Today we will learn and reflect on the works in the Philokalia by Evagrios the Solitary, whose works influenced all succeeding works in the Philokalia, as most of their works quoted Evagrios directly and also adopted his literary style. At the end of our talk, we'll discuss the sources used for this video. Please feel free to follow along in the PowerPoint presentation we uploaded to SlideShare. Please, we welcome interesting questions in the comments. Let us learn and reflect together. Kallistos Ware, in a collection of essays on the Philokalia, writes that the spirituality of the writings of Evagrios the Solitary and St Maximus the Confessor, who also built on the works of Evagrios, prevails in most of the Philokalia. The writings of Evagrios the Solitary also deeply influenced St John Climacus, St John Cassian, and St Maximus the Confessor and many other church fathers. The Philokalia adopts Evagrios' threefold classification of the spiritual way into the active life, or praktiki, the contemplation of nature, physiki, and the contemplation of God, theologia. Kallistos Ware quotes Evagrios: "When you are praying, do not shape within yourself any image of thy deity, and do not let your intellect be stamped with the impress of any form, but approach the immaterial in an immaterial manner, and then you will understand." Evagrios is the third author in the Greek Philokalia. As we previously reflected, the first work in the Greek Philokalia was placed in the appendix by the English translators, as this work by a Stoic philosopher attributed to St. Anthony does not extensively quote scripture, as do the other writings by the Eastern Church Fathers in the Philokalia. The second author, St. Isaiah, is credibly dated in the early 5th century after Evagrios. This means that practically the works of Evagrios are the foundational works of the Philokalia. The Eastern Church Fathers valued tradition over novelty. They preferred quoting the Church Fathers who preceded them, and then whatever thoughts they thought were minor additions, and they never desired to credit themselves for any wisdom. Who influenced Evagrios? He was considered the young Cappadocian. He was ordained as a priest by St Basil, and was ordained by St Gregory of Nazianzus. Since Dionysius the Areopagite was influenced by the Cappadocian Church Fathers, that means he was also influenced by Evagrios. Origen often influenced Evagrios and many other monastic fathers, but none of his writings included in the Philokalia reference the suspect teachings of Origen. But since Origen is not considered to be a saint, neither is Evagrios. We have already reflected on the Beatitudes by St Gregory of Nazianzus, the third Cappadocian Church Father, which is one of my favorite patristic works, with its truly elegant style, philosophy, and theology. Evagrios was a spiritual father for St John Cassian, who brought the Eastern monastic tradition to the West, influencing St Benedict. In our reflections on the Philokalia, which was published in 1782, we discuss how the works were selected so they would not be lost to future generations, and the manuscript including these works was dated sometime prior to 1745. Classic works such as St John Climacus' Ladder of Divine Ascent and the works of the Cappadocian Church Fathers were not included in the Philokalia because they were preserved in a rich manuscript tradition already. Evagrios and the early Church Fathers in the Philokalia teach us the beauty and elegance of the simple yet profound spiritual prayer of Jesus, or hesychastic prayer, which is Greek for mystical contemplative prayer, in which you simply pray, "Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner." In her essay on Evagrios, Julia Konstantinovsky proposes that in his work outlining Asceticism and Stillness, voluntary exile is treated as fundamental to the life of stillness. Withdrawing from society and living a celibate life is necessary for the solitary life. But it is not the abstention from marriage that counts, but the abstention from fleshly thoughts and lusts. The monk's exile in stillness is not merely a physical exile, but also an abandonment of worldly ways of life, full of material cares, for the sake of fostering an immaterial and carefree state of mind. Thus, the true exile is a spiritual exile. Konstantinovsky has a valid point. This is a central theme of the work as it's addressed to monks, but how can the rest of us living in the world live a life of spiritual exile? We should not interpret these works as being hostile to living in the world or to living a married life. Living in the world as a Christian but not being entirely of this world, living selflessly rather than selfishly, is living a life of spiritual exile of sorts. And many Christians have a shallow understanding of intimacy, that sometimes lust can only happen before marriage but never after. In reality, the problem of lust never goes away. Whenever we are in an intimate relationship, the question we can never answer is whether we're compromising the dignity of the other and whether we're using the other for our own pleasure. And we should always pray that this is not so for us, and we should always thank God for the gift that can enable us to truly love another person as we love ourselves. And then we should continually pray that in our relationship, our love for the other is a selfless love rather than a selfish love. And we discuss this concept in our video on St. John of the Cross. Evagrios begins by quoting Jeremiah, "You shall not take a wife in this place." And the primary meaning of this verse is advice not to bear sons and daughters in time of war and troubles. But Evagrios interprets this allegorically, that we should not bear worldly thoughts and desires in our hearts. These worldly thoughts and desires are weak and sickly and lead to death and have no place in heavenly life. Evagrios also quotes St. Paul, "He who is married cares for the things that are of this world, how he may please his wife, and how he is inwardly divided. And she who is married cares for the things of this world, and how she may please her husband." And this is good advice for monks who lead a celibate life. But for we who are modern and married and living in the world, this is also good advice if we read the Philokalia itself allegorically, as do many devout in the Eastern tradition. And we can read this allegorically if we see marriage itself as a monastic calling, a calling turning towards selflessness, a calling turning away from selfishness. If both spouses would flee from selfishness and seek to be selfless, they can truly succeed in loving at least their spouse as they love themselves. Then their marriage would better enable them to truly love their neighbor. Their marriage would truly be blessed, and their children would truly be blessed, and everyone they meet will be better people because they met them. Evagrios continues, "Let the monk renounce the materiality of the world to win the blessings of stillness. For the practice of stillness is full of joy and beauty. Its yoke is easy and its burden light." The memories of anyone who grew up in a house full of yelling and screaming and arguing and rancor would read this verse and wish that they had grown up in a house with peace and quiet, where patience and kindness and compassion was a rule, where nobody was bitter or angry or resentful. Evagrios urges us to make stillness your criterion for testing the value of everything, and choose always what contributes to it. Fasting was long a part of Christian tradition. Jesus exhorts us, "When you fast, fast not like the Pharisees," so fasting was not seen as optional. As Evagrios says, "Fast before the Lord according to your strength, for to do this will purge you of iniquities and sins. It exalts the soul, sanctifies the mind, and drives away the demons, and prepares you for God's presence." Now he is practical. Keep to a sparse and plain diet, not seeking a variety of tempting dishes. Should the thought come to you of getting extravagant food in order to show hospitality, dismiss it. Do not be deceived by it, for the enemy lies in ambush, waiting to tear you away from stillness. And Evagrios is quite practical in his monastic rule. Abstaining from food should be a matter of our own choice and an ascetic labor. And you should never fast to the point of damaging your health, and you should modify the fast if you're elderly or sick or diabetic. But you should never make a show of fasting. Fasting is a discipline rather than an accomplishment. Evagrios advises, if there's a meeting of the brethren and you have to eat a second or third time, do not be disgruntled or surly. Be pleasant. When you've eaten a second or third time, thank God that you fulfill the law of love and that He Himself is providing for you. Fasting in the Eastern tradition never has the devout abstain from food completely, but is more practical, refraining from meat but allowing fish at some times, refraining from meat altogether at especially holy times, refraining from oil and wine. And fasting is year-round, part of the daily life, scheduled according to the church calendar. Evagrios has other advice for monks that apply to all Christians. When buying or selling, you can hardly avoid sin. So in either case, be sure you lose a little in the transaction. Do not haggle about the price from love of gain, and so indulge in actions harmful to the soul, quarreling, lying, shifting your ground, and so on. Be on your guard where buying or selling. If possible, it is best to place the business in the hands of someone you trust, so that, being thus relieved of the worry, you can pursue your calling with joy and hope. And this has application for people who are being divorced or really undergoing any kind of legal struggle or illegal battle. Let the attorney do the negotiation, so you don't damage your soul with the anger and rancor that such legal struggles so often cause. And beware of boasting that when you think you've gotten the better end of the deal, beware of boasting that it was a steal, for perhaps it was a steal, which would make you a thief. Evagrios concludes, if you're disheartened, pray, as the Apostle James says, pray with fear, trembling, effort, and with inner watchfulness and vigilance. To pray in this manner is especially necessary because the enemies are so malignant. For it is just when the demons see us at prayer that they come and stand beside us ready to attack, suggesting to our intellect the very things that we should not think about when praying. And they try to take our intellect captive and to make our prayer and supplication vain and useless. For prayer is truly vain and useless when not performed with fear and trembling, with inner watchfulness and vigilance. And in our next video, we reflect on the other 3 works of Evagrios the Solitary, on watchfulness, passions and thoughts, and 153 texts on prayer. Now we'll discuss the sources we use for this video. These works by Evagrios the Solitary are found in Volume 1 of the Philokalia, and we also recommend this book covering the Philokalia, which we quoted from. And the church whose icons we use for this video is St Demetrios Greek Orthodox Church in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And we also have the unobstructed thumbnail picture of the monastery on Mount Athos. The YouTube description includes a link to our PowerPoint script that we uploaded to SlideShare and also our blog. Please support this channel by sharing this video with your friends and by clicking on the like and subscribe buttons and by clicking on the Amazon links to purchase any of the books we discussed, which will earn us a very small affiliate commission. And please consider becoming a patron of our channel. Plus, we will host special discussion groups for our patrons. Plus, you can click on the Meetup or small M icon to participate in our online discussions, where we practice our future YouTube scripts. And please click on the links for other videos that will broaden your knowledge and improve your soul.